Hey there, everybody. This is your favorite Gallifreyan Time Martin, Murphy's Law. Today I'm continuing the subject of my latest blog, which is telling you of my experiences uh, of different countries while in the Navy. This time I will be discussing Italy, and I have quite a bit to talk about. Next program, I will probably be talking about maybe Hawaii, or and also possibly Croatia and Ireland in the next part. In Italy, I was stationed in Naples, working for the title then was the Commander in Chief of the United States Naval Forces Europe. Now, back then, about 20 years ago, the various admirals that were in charge of the regions of the world that the Navy patrolled were called Commander in Chiefs. So I'm not talking about the President of the United States, but one of the admirals under him. Anyway, the base I worked at was in NATO, or part of NATO, it was for Allied Forces Southern Europe. It was an interesting base. They had a lot of Turkish and Italian officers there. The guards, well, on the outside, they meant business because they had Uzis in their hand, I guess to help in case of the mafia. On the inside, well, that's a different matter. One time I was walking through and they have a guard inside the main building where the admiral works at. And normally you go past and you show him your badge. Only there was this one time I walked past and he was sound asleep, and nothing I could do, or at least rather say, could wake him up. It's like you could have marched in there with a band playing the 1812 overture and would have done a thing. It's like great, wonderful security. Anyway, Italy in itself was a very good country, although certain parts did tend to uh, took a while to get used to. For instance, the driving. Now, people may think that American drivers are crazy. They have no idea. What some of the crazier American drivers do, it seemed that a lot of the regular Italian citizens did. Stoplights and stop signs, they didn't mean anything. People drove right past them, red light, green light. It's like decorations. And many times they didn't really use their seat belts, but they knew how to use their horns, that's for sure. And just pulling out in front of somebody, no problem. For instance, going from the base to, or actually the barracks, which I will discuss later, to the main naval base, we had a tour bus that we would take to act for the military. Um, and there were many times I would sit in there and we'd be driving along, this huge tour bus, and many times this one car would pull out right in front of us without so much as a glance. It's like, really? And driving there, I only drove there once, but that once was enough. It was like, I'm surprised it didn't give me a heart attack. The only time I drove, I had to drive down this one little street, and there were potholes all over the place. And Italy being Italy, kind of, I guess, because there's so much ruins and so much history there, something, there weren't all that many parking lots. So naturally, people parked on the side of the street, or rather, half of the side of the street, like half on the sidewalk and half in the street. So now you have a two-lane road that's been reduced to 1.5 lanes, and you have potholes. So trying to drive, avoid the potholes, avoid the people, avoid the cars on the side of the street, and avoid the cars coming at you. It's absolutely crazy. One of the few times that I've actually felt, once I got out of the car and safe at my destination, felt like kneeling on the ground and kissing it, thanking God that I was still alive. It was that bad. Now, the food in Italy was actually very good. You certainly didn't leave anywhere hungry. I mean, going to a restaurant, the difference between like American restaurants and Italian restaurants is that we tend to have all of our food on one plate. You have the meat, you have the vegetables, you have fish, you have soup, everything's at one sitting. In Italy, Everything's done in courses. So you have the antipasta, you have the soup, you have the meat, you have the vegetables. Everything comes in its own little plate. It's like each course is a meal in and of itself. Um, a regular meal may consist of like 5 or 6 courses. And from what I'm told, if you are going to an Italian wedding, you might not want to eat the day before or something because those things can go to like 11 courses. Um, the food was very good there. Ironically, despite the fact that, or maybe because of the fact that it was the home of pizza. I like the pizza there, but I beg your pardon, but it's like I lost my taste for American pizza for the most part. It's like it was fake. It was just not real. However, in compensation for that, that is where I gained my appreciation, my like for fried mozzarella sticks. First time I've had them, and I've been addicted to them ever since. Now, on to the bachelor quarters I was talking about. For the bachelor enlisted barracks, unlike in America where there are places, specifically designed for that, for us, they took in some Italian apartments and converted them to the barracks. Now, these apartments were not new, and they were just, everything was Italian plumbing and whatnot. They were kind of, weren't exactly slums, but they were kind of old. And personally, I think that whoever designed the departments, or between the architect, the plumber, and the electrician, one, if not all three of those, should have been fired. I mean, when you build the water heater inside the same area as the bathtub, it's like, what kind of nonsense is that? You know, it got to the point where one time I was taking a shower, and when I touched the faucet, I got what felt like a mild electric jolt. Now, you don't normally think that you're going to get a jolt from touching, a bathtub faucet. That's kind of a scary feeling. So I'm thinking, okay, I must have cut my finger, and somehow something is touching the quick, the fresh, the part underneath the part of the wound. So that's what's causing it. I looked at my hands, no cuts. It's like, okay. So I touch it again, and I still get that mild, sort of a little bit of a shock. It's not enough to make you jerk, but still, you can feel something. Well, I tell the management about that. They look into it, and evidently there was a short in the wiring on the water heater. That's maybe a few 2 feet, a foot away from you. It's like great, just what everybody needs to get in the shower and get the possibility of electric jolt. If that's not the recipe for a horror story, I don't know what it is. Outside of that, the place was pretty good. At least in my little area, there was, of course, we didn't get our own apartment. We are, bachelors, so it was a room enough for 3 people. Two of the people had a sort of open bedroom, and then there was a separate bedroom that had its own door. I was the At the time I was the senior person there, so I got my own room. That was pretty nice. And everything was connected to a common area with like a living room, kitchen, and so forth. And it had a gate that could be open and closed and sort of a guard post, so it was pretty nice, but the power system was not that good there. We had a lot of power outages, but eh, get what you make. Now, the barracks were located on top of a hill, or rather, actually, on top of a mountain, or, well, even more, it was, to be more specific, on top of a sulfuric volcano. Um, there was, I guess you might say, luckily, enough cracks around to let off some of the steam so that it didn't actually explode. Unfortunately, that steam, again, was sulfur. So there were many mornings you get to wake up to the absolutely uh, wonderful bouquet of rotten eggs. It's like, blech. Not exactly something you want to open the window and inhale. Oh well. Now the mountain was extremely steep, uh, very steep, and it was a very tall mountain. So the road going from the barracks down to where the actual naval base was, where you had all the shops and the administrative buildings, it was quite curvy as well. It is not some place that, unless you were reckless, thoughtless, brainless, or careless, or whatnot, fearless, that you would want to be driving on a bike, because otherwise you'd probably end up going 100 miles an hour by the time you reach the bottom. And trying to get to the top of that thing, it was, no matter how you did, unless it was like a motorcycle, it was definitely a lot of exercise. So, absolutely crazy. And the weather out there was pretty nice. It was one of the first times I actually got to see snow in, I guess it was November, but coming from Houston, we didn't get to see all that much of it, so it was pretty nice. Got a little hot since we're somewhat close to Africa and the equator, but it was pretty good. Another thing about Naples was the water was non-potable, so you couldn't drink it. And the Wendy's in the base, they had ice, but because it came from this non-potable water, the ice was only used to cool the drinks. They'd pour the drinks in the cup and then put it inside the ice machine, as it were, surrounded by ice. But you couldn't actually have ice in your drink. Another thing about the Wendy's there was that I don't know what they did, but I don't know if they had like Italians cooking the burgers, but they were not like Wendy's burgers here. The buns were made so that you'd start eating, and before you got halfway through, the bun would dissolve. So you would end up holding the patty and the cheese and mustard, and mayo, pickle, lettuce, and all the stuff. Just no bun. Many times the bun would just sort of fizzle away, and it's like, blah. It was all right. Um, let's see. The people were pretty friendly, from what I can remember. Didn't really have to worry all that much about uh, crime or anything. The countryside was pretty nice. There were some nice ruins off just a little ways away so you could see. They also had this one church that it was evidently at a place where on the top of this hill slash mountain slash volcano, a, a saint, one of their saints had gotten beheaded, and the head had rolled down the hill, and where the head stopped, that's where the church was. In one of these other churches, they had, I think, blood of the saint that they kept in vials, and they would watch it. Uh, and supposedly, every time the blood in the vial reliquefied, which it wasn't really supposed to do after, hundreds of years, but every time it did, it would supposedly portend the some big event, an earthquake, the winning of their game or something, some significant sign. One thing about the people is that they didn't really celebrate birthdays as such. Those were not really important. What was important was name day. Usually, a lot of the guys there, a lot of the Italian guys, would be named after saints, and they would celebrate the birthday of the saint whom they were named after. So that was pretty interesting. Let's see. Well, that's about it for me right now. Uh, I can think of. Again, next time I will be discussing Hawaii, and if I have time, maybe Croatia and Italy, although that may be a separate blog in and of itself. But until then, I hope you can like, comment, and share this video, and I will speak with you later. This is your favorite Time Gallifreyan Time Martin Murphy's Law signing off. Goodbye, everybody.